Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Living Astrology. It's time to grab your cup of coffee. You're going to need it this morning. Sit back and relax. Maybe you need something less volatile, maybe some tea, um, because Tam and I have a lot to share with you this morning. So, welcome, Tam. It's always good to have you with me.
Yay, I'm happy to be here. Hi, everyone. Yay.
Yeah, so of course we meet once a month so that we can talk about what is looking ahead anyway at the next month. And this time we are looking ahead at the month of August, which promises to be this year. You thought July was crazy? I I just can't even.
I have a question. Is anybody sleeping? Oh my God, the dreams
Mm,
and oh my, it is bizarre. And I've actually looked at the Schumann resonance, and there's like big gaps in the resonance where like the whole world is wide awake going, what is going on?
that's funny. That is really funny. I, rather than having awake issues, am finding it difficult to stay awake sometimes. Like
Oh,
like
wow.
in the evening at the end of my day, you know, my husband and I, we always have dinner and then we sit down and we turn on a show, something that we, have been watching, and I and him too, now that I think about it, are always falling asleep,
That's my
right?
husband too. He's in a
Mm.
period of what you're experiencing, you and Terry.
Yeah, and I was always the one that was wide awake, and
Yeah.
then, last night was the first night that I'd had any trouble falling asleep, and I have, you know, don't have a clue what was
I
going on.
lay there in bed like this.
What do I do? Oh, okay. So, good morning as everybody is popping in here. I really am so happy to have you all joining us this morning, and I hope more people join live because this information is cutting edge. It is not for the faint of heart. So
Not
I'm
for the
gonna
faint of heart. I love that.
right,
That's true.
and I'm gonna jump right in and say that when I typically try to be the Libran diplomat when it comes to politics and world events, I'm just kind of paying lip service to it on the surface. I cannot avoid it anymore this
I
morning.
We're straight up going CNN and Newsmax on you.
Oh, yes, we are. And I'll tell you, there's so much information. Let's just dive in very quickly. And those of you that come in late, I'll just have to help you find the recording because there's no way we can go back through all of this stuff. So before we jump into August, we need to take a retrospective a bit into the month of July, which, by the way, was crazy. No matter how you sliced it, that Mars Uranus conjunction really became an explosive combination in many different ways, right? In so many different ways. But primarily, I wanted to talk about the fact that Mars and Uranus were also conjunct the fixed star algol. Now, fixed stars are the oldest way that we did astrology, right? In the old days, they didn't see any planets beyond Saturn, right? And even then, I'm not sure if they really had that pantheon playing out. But the fixed stars were always in the sky at the same time of the year and year in and out, right? So they could depend on them. So the fixed star Algol is considered the head of the Medusa.
Ooh,
When all the constellations are very much mythologically based, right? There's a myth of Perseus, let's say. Perseus, I think, is the one who cut the head off the Medusa. And there's the whole Medusa myth, turning people to stone. And in this case, the head of the Medusa, uh, or the fixed star Algol, always represented the head because of the Medusa's head and violence. And it was sitting right on top of Trump's midheaven. So we have a very powerful combination of planets and malevolently creating energy of danger for Mr. Trump. And of course, what happens?
ping.
It
Right.
could have been so much worse, right? It could have been so much worse. And that particular aspect creates this idea of chaos, right? I mean, think of the chaos that erupted at that event, first of all, but the chaos that it creates as, the waves go out of the impact of something like that, which also leads to fragmentation. So the purpose of Mars square Uranus in this particular case, conjunct Algol, was a fragmentation event, right? It splits apart, right?
Mhm.
It splits apart. And
Not just his ear, but people.
right.
Just to be funny.
Yes, that's funny. It splits apart the philosophies, it splits apart the
Right,
culture, right? And it, as anything, if you break a glass and it fragments, you can never put it back together in the same way,
right,
right? Life fundamentally changes. Reality fundamentally changes. You either scoop it up and throw it away, or you start fresh with something new, um, but it's never the same.
right.
And this is also being played into by Pluto's transit through Aquarius, now retrograde in Aquarius, where the fragmentation is all about this move away from centrist ideologies,
Right,
from moderation, right? Because Pluto in Aquarius is always a representation of what's coming new, right? What's the new going to be by rearranging the chessboard, right? So it empowers the margins. So the people out on the edges, right? It's a people sign. Pluto is empowering the people on the margins.
right,
So we don't no longer do we have things the same old, right? We just can't depend on the same old because it's falling apart. It's dropping out. And when we have a Mars square Uranus, of course, we see the impact of that.
I have
But
a question before you continue. Like, what is the timing of Algo in relation to the assassination attempt that happened?
they were exact.
But what date? What was the date of that?
That would have been, oh, hold on, I'll tell you. It was on um
Because what we're talking about here is the
the
event
13th
that's
of the
sorry,
13th of July.
the 13th of July. Okay.
Yeah. And it was still in action all through the month of July.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Yep.
Yeah. Now, also, some of the other things that are changing. So this is Aquarian energy out in the background. We have this idea of technology. And what's the next big thing that happens? CrowdStrike,
CrowdStrike.
right? CrowdStrike, Uranus conjunct Mars, but also squaring Mercury in the shadow of his retrograde in Leo. The whole thing.
Do we need to explain what CrowdStrike is? You think most people understand the CrowdStrike dilemma where
Well, it was the big IT outage, right? Where
in Europe?
something happened. A CrowdStrike is a program that a lot of big businesses and the airports and all the different. I even think the
It's supposed to be a security system for them.
it's a security thing for them, and they did an update, and the update went bad and took out the whole
Technology.
So technology, right? Squared by Mercury, of course, that rules, technology flubs. And there was a big flub. But I want you all to think about that as a setup for Mercury in retrograde starting August 4th and what that might mean for us all in terms of our own technology, right? Because, in the shadow of Mercury's retrograde, we see the themes lining up.
Yes.
Right. And we see, oh, okay, so we're going to have some, more technological issues, maybe cybersecurity type issues and events. And as we go on through this broadcast this morning, you're going to see why that might even come into greater focus as we get into the month of August. All right. Now, this is going to be, yes, it is as well, Christine. It is also called the demon star or the winking demon star because it tends to blink out and that's how you really know it's Algol because it's here and then it's gone. It's here and then it's gone. So it's that kind of thing. Good morning to you, J Lo, Sharon Little, hello from Maine, Pam Saruba, hello, and anybody else out there who I can't see, Marianne, hello to you. Now this is going to be one of those days where you're going to need to ask questions. If you do, please post them. Tam will help.
Yep.
see them because I know she can see them.
Yep.
So the first thing we're going to talk about into the month of August is the new moon. That is the big thing. The new moon occurs in tandem basically with Mercury turning retrograde.
Let's let everybody know that this is such a big month that Janet and I did something we don't usually do, and we had to confer ahead of time. What are we going to talk about? Because this month is so packed with stuff. Honestly, if you have a notebook, get it out. This is a lot. So, and this moon kicks it all off.
Right. The new moon happens at 12 degrees, 34 minutes of Leo. So find Leo in your astrology chart. And later in Friday's broadcast, I will tell my listeners more about the human design aspect of this because I just don't want to take the time to do that today. But no, this is a pretty powerful new moon. It's a positive new moon because it's also sextile Mars. And Mars lining up with Jupiter at this point for their conjunction later on in the month. So in real terms, this particular new moon is really like a version of something new that's being birthed, right? A new moon always is something new, but there's something here about us birthing something new and the need for us to be bold
and creative and
creative and authentic
and authentic.
and
Yes.
being in your own authority. It's also, this is a whole other aside that we're going to talk about later in the broadcast. It also happens to be President Obama's birthday, and that makes him suddenly come out into the world again in a bigger way. And we were talking about the fact that a lot of people, and I've heard this too, Tam, that Obama is really the one behind
Shadow president.
the shadow president, the power behind the throne, if you will.
There you go.
And his birthday being the same day as the new moon puts him in a position of being more seen, right? Maybe more visible to all of us.
Shining on him.
Yep. It's a very powerful new beginning for him. And good or bad, we don't know. I could have pulled his chart, I didn't, but it just seems like we're going to hear more about him.
Yeah.
We're going to see more of him in some respects. And I think that'll be interesting for all of us. And as a Leo anyway, he is considered a leader, right? There's these leadership qualities that just come off of him. So it's interesting to see how it is that this new moon plays out for everybody. So in a new moon, of course, it's always a time to set intentions.
Mm-hmm.
So if I were you, and I was looking at the Leo part of my chart and I said, oh, this is in my 5th house of creativity and joy and play, then I would immediately set intentions around those topics, right? Or if it's in your house of career, then there's something new coming there, right? This is a time for us to set powerful intentions, boldly moving ourselves forward in time.
According to where Leo is in your chart, which house, which will indicate which area of life for you, that's what you want to set your intentions for with that Leo flair.
Yeah. Leo being a sign of self-expression, creativity, being seen,
yeah,
right? Confident,
heart-centered leadership.
Heart-centered leadership, all these big qualities that we think of as Leo is ruled by the sun,
yes,
right? So it's shining very brightly energy. Okay. And now we're going to move to August 5th. We're going to do this differently today. So we're going to do spans of time, and then I'll pepper in significant days within this span of time, because that's the only way that we can really do this. We're going to look at the macro and then come into the micro. And actually, August 5th to August 29th is the time where Venus is moving into Virgo, or the time that she is in the sign of Virgo. Now, Venus is the planet of love and harmony and peace and beauty, art, relationships, money. She holds a lot of very personal information for all of us, right? And her transits trigger those kinds of areas of our lives. And when she's in Virgo, she's in her fall. In astrology, we have these phrases that describe a planet's energy in certain signs. She's empowered or in her domicile, for example, her home in Taurus and in Libra, But in Virgo, she's in her fall, which means that she struggles here.
Yeah.
This is not her favorite place because, first of all, Virgo is a sign of perfection
Mhm.
and perfecting. Venus likes the aesthetics, right? The beauty, the harmony, the flow. And Virgo's going, yes, but that's not the right shade of that color. So, right,
Well,
attempting to course correct, if you will, but also points out the places where things are not in right order,
mhm.
right? Do you have anything you want to add about Venus and Virgo?
Uh, I would
But
only add that I said this to Janet earlier, like Venus is the cosmic tramp this month. She's making trouble everywhere she goes. And it's not that she's a troublemaker really, but she's super, super busy this year. And she's in her fall. She's unhappy. She's if you picture Marilyn Monroe, which is how I picture Venus, she's Marilyn Monroe, but she's like wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt. She's unhappy, right? Because, and actually, really in Virgo, she's wearing a lab coat, so she's uptight. That's how I picture it. Marilyn Monroe in a lab coat. She's super uptight, overanalyzing everything. She's just a busy lady this month, making trouble wherever she goes. So
yeah, she is putting love, relationships, finances in a scientific sort of logical framework,
yeah,
and that doesn't always bode well. However, she does give us access to practical expressions of love,
mhm,
right, and affection,
mhm,
where we're actually paying attention to details even, right? We're on a path of service in relationships and love and all of that. Um, it's about, if you're building something, right? You want good craftsmanship.
mhm.
Venus and Virgo can blend the best of the aesthetics with the best of perfectionism, right? Or perfecting and doing things correctly. So improvement, right? And improving on something in your life. There's also great discernment with the sign of Virgo
Absolutely.
and the potential for financial prudence, let's say, because
Sure.
that's the financial aspect.
Yeah.
Maybe analyzing relationships, whether analyzing relationships is good or bad doesn't really matter at this point. It's a thing that might be happening because Venus is more analytical and critical in the sign of Virgo, right? She's looking at something in a very realistic, down to earth, practical, pragmatic sort of way, when typically love is not that.
Right.
Right. So at this point in time with Venus and Virgo, we have practical considerations in all of those areas of
So it's
life.
cautionary, really. Like Venus and Virgo, like be warned because you want to be careful, right?
Yes.
You want to be mindful as the whole like Uber Virgo that I am. Like this is totally hitting home. Like I'm like, oh, I got like uh,
Dis- discerning. This is discerning is the word, right?
yeah.
Um,
Well, that's the problem. He's being overly discerning sometimes.
Perhaps, right?
Yeah.
But she also, in this case with Virgo, rules our health and our daily routines,
True.
our well-being.
Yeah,
So we might have a more critical eye to our diet, to our
that'd be good.
intake of supplements, to the body and exercise, all those things that support good health.
True.
But as well, we have to watch out for things, right?
Yeah.
And the challenges are typically going to be about being overly critical,
Yeah.
right? Being perfectionistic. I want all of my human design people out there to remember that we don't criticize people, we don't judge people, we don't offer up our opinions of things unless we are asked to share them. Otherwise, right, it comes off as being
Totally.
critical or judgmental.
Mhm.
So watch out for that. But it's a period of time where love and beauty and values are all expressed in more practical, service oriented and detailed ways.
Yeah.
Right? That's
Perfect.
that's the key. So
Yep.
it's not horrendous,
Not at all.
but it can be a little disconcerting. Now, on August 28th, so by the way, you guys take notes, write down dates because these might be things that you want to watch for. Venus will still be in Virgo on August 28th, but she will be in an opposition to Neptune, who's sitting at about 28, 29 degrees of the sign of Pisces, the opposite sign. So now we have this axis of the practical service of Virgo and the more unconditional loving energy of Neptune. So we might be given to flights of fancy, during this period of time, right? Neptune rules the imagination
Imagination. Yeah.
and fantasy and
Illusion.
creative illusions. Exactly.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, that could actually be more about artistic inspiration or
Sure.
being inspired by all things Venus, which could be finances, which could be your
E.
art, your
Yep.
business, right? Lots of different things. And it can also lead to creative disappointment. It's a difficult day to pin down
Mm.
because of the nature of that opposition. Remember, oppositions are two different things vying for expression at the same time. Venus in Virgo, the analytical, the critical, the let's practically beautify, and then Neptune in Pisces, which says, oh, let's throw all of that analysis out and let's just, do all these things outside of boundaries.
Right.
Could be a difficult day. On August 8th, another day that we want to circle, Venus in Virgo will come into a conjunction with Mercury retrograde in Virgo. All right. And that's a big day because these are two inner planets. Inner planets hit us personally,
Close to home.
close to home. So you want to find Virgo in your chart because this is the harbinger. What we're talking about now are the things that you might have to deal with in your own personal life, depending again on the house, as Tam said, that you're actually experiencing a Virgo transit. So when Virgo conjuncts Mercury retrograde, it is going to emphasize a period of introspection.
Mm.
Right? Mercury in retrograde brings up the reevaluation of all things Virgo in your life at this point. So we may be reevaluating communication. Mercury is the ruler of communication
Mhm.
in your relationships. We may have more of a reflective tone in the way that we speak to one another or in the way that we, look at ourselves. It's a great time for revising plans and agreements. And I want you to note all of this happens before the very tension filled mid part of August through the end of August.
Right.
Okay. So this is a time for you to really get deeper into whatever it is that you need to reevaluate for yourself, revise your plans and agreements, right? Don't,
8/8, of course, is the annual Lionsgate. So
uh-huh.
that's kind of interesting. It really might be a nice little portal for some big work. And we're in an 8 year. So we're in an
888.
8. We are
88.
I would look at 888 as a really good day to do some big, important internal work. And yes, assimilate information by reviewing, reflecting, and then renewing yourself toward a course
Yeah.
correction. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And these conjunctions create new energies, right? They come together, they represent something, in this case really representing the reevaluation of communication, of health and wellness, because that's what Virgo's about, of
Yep.
your routines, of the way that you think, right?
Service.
All these things.
Yep.
Service, right?
Yep.
And because Venus also rules finances, there could be this financial reset or reevaluation of that. So again, the challenges are going to be about relationship strains if we turn out to be overly critical, judgmental, or analytical, too analytical. I mean, it's okay to strive to give constructive feedback, right? We all want constructive feedback,
Mhm.
but we don't want to be shamed or blamed or, brought to tears by someone observing something about us without our invitation to do so. So we have to be very careful, or we can actually ruin our relationships instead of strengthening them.
Yeah.
And no, despite your best efforts, there could likely be communication missteps. That always happens with Mercury in retrograde. So, despite the fact that Venus in Virgo is driving us toward clarity, we have Mercury in Virgo that's going not so fast, right? Double check everything, right? Everything, addresses, um, words that you're writing in an email, agreements that you're signing. Here's a fun fact. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law are getting ready to move into a new place, and yesterday was the day they were to sign their lease. And even though we are not in Mercury retrograde yet, he luckily reread that lease, spotted an error, and it's being corrected today, and
There.
they'll sign a lease. So this is the thing, right? These It could have happened after they moved in August 1st that they suddenly realize, oh my God, there's this error in this lease. And they say, too bad you signed it.
Right. Ooh, good catch for them.
Right? Good catch for them. A good catch for all of us when we kind of do the double check, right? Double check everything. Okay, then let's talk a little bit about Mercury retrograde. We've talked about this before
I was just
already, in the context of the show here. Mercury is retrograde from August 5th to about August 25th, and he is retrograde from August 5th to 14th in Virgo. Then he moves back into Leo for the rest of the cycle and then moves forward at 21 degrees of Leo. So we're still playing with this Leo and Virgo energy, okay? And, Mercury retrograde in Virgo is about perfecting. It's about objective analysis, right? Of what it is that needs to be perfected, what needs to be reviewed, what needs to be refined, right? So there's, all of that. But because Mercury's the ruler of Virgo, we actually have too much Virgo or too much Mercury, right? It's like this Mercury
wow.
overload.
Right.
It,
Overload.
yeah, it's overload. And where does it overload?
Yeah.
Your
You're right.
mind.
Yep.
Right? The thinking. We get into overthinking. We get into too much. We get into analysis paralysis, perhaps. We get into this I'm not perfect. It's not perfect. I need to keep going and going. It can be very difficult. And when we're tired or when we are overloaded, we make mistakes.
Yeah.
Things break down, systems break down.
Yep.
So, thus, Mercury retrograde sometimes is, why we have so much stuff like happens in our transportations, in our equipment, especially, communication equipment, your laptops, your phones, your et ceteras, right?
I want to check in with you. I can't remember if this was our conversation before the show started or if you've covered how the retro shade period foretells.
I haven't covered that yet, but
all right.
we did sort of speak to it when we were talking about CrowdStrike
Okay.
and how that happened, in the run up to Mercury's retrograde, and how that sets up themes for us to be watchful for
Here we go.
in Mercury's retrograde.
Right.
Right. So cybersecurity, software issues, update issues. I don't know if you get this, but are you on a Mac or on a PC?
Mac.
Well, every Tuesday for people who have PCs, there is an update that comes out, and it's automatically updating the whole system. And it's in those updates sometimes during the Mercury retrograde where problem really happens.
Sure.
And CrowdStrike was sort of that.
Yeah.
So what do? We breathe. We
Yeah.
laugh at ourselves. We laugh at the situations. We have to be patient.
Yeah.
Right? Patience is not optional.
Yep.
It's
As a
necessary.
matter of fact, this is a really good chance for me to say I was looking through the resources in the Energy Almanac for this month, and one of the major resources for August of 2024 is self-care. That's one thing I want to say. So ramp up your self-care, whatever you're doing, because there's a lot in the air. There is a lot going on. And what triggered me to say this to you, Janet, is the other tool, which is in the almanac is the laughter resource. I absolutely loved the laughter resources that we put in the book this year. And the resource for this month is the child's cheer. So every time you notice something go right this month, very good, very good. Yay. That's the child's cheer. So you know what? Things going to happen. Mercury retrograde in Virgo and Leo. Things are going to happen. We know that. Very good. Very good. Yay. That's right. She laughed.
That's funny.
The more we laugh, we get the endorphins going. We can feel good. So very good. Very good. Yay.
Yeah. I just noticed a message here by Sharon Little. She says, is August 8th a good day to address relationships with Virgos? Well, it's a possibility. Without really looking at your chart, Sharon, I don't know for certain. But what I can say is that Venus is conjunct Mercury in retrograde that day. So it's a good time to address issues from the past. Like if there's something from the past that you need to work with, but I would never address it in a way that was
pointed.
pointing out another person's flaws, for example, or being more blaming, right? You would have to be very, very careful about how you bring things up.
Wouldn't it be a good day for her to reflect on the relationship instead of addressing it that day?
There's that. That's a possibility. Yep, definitely. And then maybe reserve your opportunity to speak with that person until after the retrograde is over,
Mm.
and maybe even wait until Mercury's retrograde is not only over, but he's moved back into Virgo, which won't be until September. So, yeah, it just depends on what that situation is. Is it a conversation you've had before? Is this the next level of that conversation? But I'd still be very careful no matter how you slice it. Okay. All right. Now we're going to, oh, one last thing about Mercury. Uh, First of all, he's retrograding back into Leo, so there could be some more frustration and so forth with Mercury retrograde there, right? Frustrating our plans that we're trying to move forward with. Because while, Leo energy, Mercury moved through Leo, he wasn't retrograde initially. So we had these big plans, perhaps, and we had things that we wanted to do. Then Mercury goes retrograde, and now he's retrograde back in Leo. So we may be rethinking the plans that we made earlier in July or late in July and earlier in August. So just be aware he's a trickster
Yes, right.
and you never know.
Sure.
You
Mental.
just don't know. So
Yes.
be prepared for anything. And then on August 19th, and you guys need to circle this day on your calendar,
Yeah.
highlight it, put a box around it because that day is so, it's in your face that day.
Mhm.
And on that day, Mercury is Cazimi the sun. And Cazimi is a term that means in the heart of the sun. When that happens, he is within 0.17 seconds of exactitude to the sun, right? He's not just passing over it and within a degree. He is so close that he disappears into the heart of the sun. And that day gives us extraordinary mental clarity, right? Thankfully, this is the most positive thing that's going to happen out of that day. But he is also squaring Uranus that day. Yay, go, go. He is squaring Uranus that day, so there might be surprising solutions to things that you've been dealing with, but he's in trickster mode. So we have to also beware, right? Beware. But that is usually the beginning. It is always the beginning of the Mercury Sun cycle. So it's like it has a new moon feel to it, right? It's all new, even though he's in retrograde. And it being in the square to Uranus means that there could be some like surprising results, surprising things. And I'm just going to point out the first of my little political things. That is also the day that the Democratic National Convention begins. So we see an event of importance that begins with Mercury retrograde, Cazimi the sun, and squaring Uranus.
And of course, the sun on the world is like leaders. The sun
Right.
represents leaders. So keep that in mind.
The sun represents the leaders. It represents the next direction. It represents the heart of something in this case because this is occurring, that conjunction is occurring in Leo,
Mm.
right? So it's fascinating, right?
Fascinating.
Now here we go. Hold on to your hats, people. For the next 30 minutes or so, Tam and I are going to be waxing political, which, you know, again, we're trying to just share information. It's not necessarily our opinions. It is not necessarily what we believe, but it is what is happening in the stars above, which shine their archetypal energy down here on the earth. So, if you wanted to circle a time in the month, August 10th through 20th is when a very powerful T square begins to line up for us in between Saturn in an opposition to Virgo, and between Saturn squaring Jupiter, Mars in conjunction, and Venus also or in a square to Venus or to Jupiter and Mars. And I'm going to show a picture here of this while we chat, if that is going to work for me. Share screen. Window. Here we go. Now, all of y'all should be seeing the T square. Let me explain a T square first off because people might not understand that. So, a T square happens when we have two planets in opposition, two or more planets can be in opposition, and they happen to each be squaring a third planet or a third set of planets. So over here, we have this opposition between Saturn at 1728 Pisces and Venus at 1747 Virgo, and each one of them squaring a very powerful Jupiter Mars conjunction in the sign of Gemini. So, a T square then becomes a very highly activated um, configuration of planets, right? And it's a T square because if you draw a T, right, you could draw the T here. Um, who knows where that name came from, but it is pretty much a T. And that is occurring all through the last or through the from the 10th to the 20th or so of the month. So it's activated for a long time. Now, I'm going to break down some of the pieces in this for you as we go along. The first thing I want to break down for you is August 14th. Now, remember, on August 14th, Mercury is retrograded back into Leo, right? So we have this very powerful Leo energy set up. And on that same day, August, oh my God, August 14th, Mars and Jupiter come together and they square Saturn, right? So that is Mars and Jupiter right here, and they're squaring Saturn. That happens exact on August 14th. Okay, so we have some things that we need to watch out for here with the Cazimi, right, happening also within that same period of time. We have combustible energy, right? We have challenges, we have unpredictability. We have things that we have to watch out for. And Mars conjunct Jupiter is bombastic kind of energy. It's crusader energy. It's let's do things let's, start a movement kind of energy. And it's the beginning of a cycle of Mars and Jupiter together, right? It's a 2-year cycle. And in this particular beginning of their cycle, they are squaring Saturn. And that is a tension between expansion energies of Jupiter conjunct Mars and contraction energies of Saturn. So, what we really have is this need for restrained expansion. And the square is always going to bring the need up for caution, for having limits to structure, Saturn, right? Saturn's structure. And we may feel torn as a country. We may feel torn as people in the country between pushing forward and pulling back. And it may manifest for us as fluctuating motivation levels or, different levels of risk and caution. And yet there's this impulse, this evolutionary impulse to push us forward. So we're being pushed forward, and all of that creates frustration and impatience. Right. Now let's look at maybe the more moderating influence here, which might be the Mars-Jupiter conjunction in the square to Venus in Virgo. And here we have conflicts between our desires and our values, right? And impulsive decisions versus the practical considerations, the things that we, really evaluate before we take action. The energetic, enthusiastic conjunction of Jupiter and Mars, of course, wants to move quickly and wants to jump at opportunities, especially anything around communication. They want to say things, they want to communicate, they want to be intellectual. However, the challenge to that energy by Venus is in Virgo, no less, is the insistence on being practical and thorough and cautious. And particularly in the areas of finances and in relationships and so forth. So we're balancing. This is a need for balance between ideals and reality. Now, keep in mind, this this is big energy and it's happening for a longer period of time in the month. All right. So when we're talking about this, we also need to look at Mars.
Mhm.
Mars on August 16th comes into an exact square to Saturn. So they're collectively Jupiter and Mars squaring Saturn, but they each individually also have their day, if you will, in that conjunction to Saturn. And that happens to be on August 16th. And we'd have to look back to the last time Mars squared Saturn in this cycle, which happened in April of this year. And that was a day when Israel attacked Iran.
Right.
And, Jupiter has expansive energy. He is expanding perhaps the natural confrontation, conflict, tension, violence of Mars. And that comes into Saturn energy. So it's freaking wild because, as we talked about before the show started here this morning, Tam, we're already seeing these conflicts between Israel and Iran.
Right.
And there's been the now assassination of a leader of the Hamas movement.
Yep.
And there was an attack already of Israel on Hezbollah.
Yep.
And that is volatility. And this is a repeat of this,
Oof.
like the next level,
Yep.
right? And I want you to note that if we look at the country of Iran and we look at their natal chart, their nodes, their destiny sits across 17 Pisces and Virgo. So
Oh,
this is the
wow.
same place that Saturn and Virgo are being
Okay, wait,
opposed by.
wait. So there's a lot of talk right now about an impending war. Would these dates, that there's a trigger point here? Holy moly.
There's a trigger point here where these little skirmishes that have been happening get bigger.
Get bigger for sure. Oh my God. I didn't know about the Pisces Virgo axis with them. Interesting.
Yeah, came as a shock to me too, but it's not only the same Pisces Virgo axis, it's the same freaking degree.
Right, the degree is what caught my attention. Yeah.
Yeah, same degree, 17 degrees.
Yikes.
And across Pisces and Virgo. And, this is where we get Iran as a very ideological governance, right?
Yes.
Because we're across an axis here, destiny-wise, pushing them to those ideals that they hold religiously, right? And you could say that this has been an assault, really, a clash of ideologies between the two countries.
Totally.
So hold on to your hats because there's more coming with this, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to say exactly how that is going to show up, but you know that Jupiter can amplify and it can magnify things that are already happening. So a bigger conflict, perhaps a wider conflict, a bigger violent act. Hard to say about that, but that's one thing to watch. And this takes me to this need to now go backwards in time. So let's get our time travel on. We're going to go back because not only is this T square fantastic in terms of the tension it brings and all of the changes it brings and the fragmentation and the conflict, it is also showing us the next part of a synodic cycle. And I'm using the word synodic as it is the cycles of planets that repeat. Right. So, for example, if we time travel back to December 21st of 2020, that was when Jupiter and Saturn first made their conjunction up here at 0 degrees of Aquarius. Now the two planets are coming into the first square since their conjunction. Now, let's talk about this cycle because in December 2020, a new 800-year cycle began, or a cycle where we went into the energy of air from the energy of earth. Right. So the air cycle took over. And the Jupiter-Saturn cycle is all about the fate of rulers. It is about politics. It is about the governance of countries, of a world, of an organization, of our institutions. It is about the law. It is about legal ramifications of the laws. It is about rules, the rules that we live by. It is about the boundaries that we have, the things that we don't cross. although we've crossed lots of them, right? Because that conjunction happened in Aquarius, we have this whole new ideal that is being birthed. And so the crashing down of all of the old is what we've been experiencing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the hard aspects, which are conjunctions, squares, and oppositions, always point to the restructuring of society when it comes to Jupiter in that and Saturn's cycle. So what we're seeing then is the restructuring of society on every level in every country, not just the USA, but I live here in the USA, so I know more about the USA. And if we look back at that conjunction, we can look at some of the events and the fallout from those events that were occurring at that time, and we get a read for what this entire cycle is all about. Okay. And what was happening at that conjunction? The pandemic,
Yep.
right? The first vaccine came out, right? In Aquarian, it was a new kind of vaccine. It was built on messenger RNA and was different than any other vaccine that's ever been brought to us in terms of, polio or measles, mumps, rubella, all of those that we were familiar with. This was different, and therefore was also the impetus to a lot of disruption and people wanting, to avoid that new technology. Um, it was also a time of a lot of bureaucratic interference in our lives, right?
Absolutely.
Trying to tell us that you had to have a vaccine perhaps in order to travel and
Or go to work.
or go to work or get on a bus or a train or anything like that, right? So it was also the beginning idea of what would become, which hasn't happened yet, a global pandemic treaty,
Mm.
right? Where the world would agree on what would happen in the event of a pandemic and who would do what and how would we get vaccines out or how would we deal with, travel, et cetera, et
National
cetera.
travel. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that has been put off until June of 2025 because there's no agreement
Mm.
yet about what that is going to look like. Who's going to control it?
Mm-hmm.
That is big deal. And what we're seeing here in that initial conjunction is the concept of control and how it's winding down.
Thank goodness.
Right? Control winding down. Another concept that came out at that time because of the government sending us money was this idea of universal basic income.
Mm-hmm.
And, whether you agree or disagree with that doesn't really matter. It was there in our faces. It's a theme now of this whole Jupiter Saturn cycle. And does that come back up? Right? Is it a planned
Oh,
or
there's lots of talk about it. I'm actually hearing that in many, many, many countries right now. UBI is a thing, and I think
UBI? Yep, UBI.
I think it's coming to America as well.
I think it will be. And that's because one of the things it does with Pluto moving through Aquarius is it evens the playing field somewhat,
Sure.
right? It gives everyone access to at least money that can pay for their basic living.
Yeah.
Hopefully. I don't know what that's going to look like. It is also where we started hearing talk about central bank digital currencies.
Absolutely.
Love them or hate them.
Yep.
It's a little scary because I think it leads to the death of cash in our system, but who knows, right? We don't know exactly how that's going to play out, but that is another theme that was coming up at that time. Now you have to know this T square is happening in mutable signs: Saturn in Pisces, Venus in Virgo, Jupiter, Mars in Gemini. They are mutable signs, and mutable means signs that are willing to change, where we are forced to become more flexible, to be more adaptable, that we have all of these different competing ideas and desires, and we're kind of moving in so many directions that it's very difficult to find unity in anything. So are we ever, the bigger evolutionary energy is about coming to unity, right? The age of Aquarius brings us into a human sort of unity. But right now, solutions to the problems of the world are very hard to come by because everybody has an opinion.
I don't
right?
think that's ever going to change.
No, that is not ever going to change probably. But fundamentally, we have trouble coming to any kind of consensus,
Yeah.
right? Collaboration is hard to come by because there's so many ideas flying around. And you know how it is when you personally have a lot of ideas, you
Mhm.
get overwhelmed, your focus gets scattered. Well, imagine that on a bigger, basis. So, and in the context of all of this craziness, the Democratic National Convention begins at the height of the T square.
Yes, I know that's fascinating to me too. I'm
Mm.
super curious about that. Hold on, you said something that I have to touch on.
Okay.
I brought this up in July at the right before we were closing. I was talking about Neptune sextile Pluto for the month of part of July and definitely through all of August. It's a long-term transit. And
It's years long transit.
it's a years long sorry, years long.
Mhm.
And
And every one of us were born when Neptune last sextiled
oh, is
Pluto.
that true?
Pretty much. Yeah.
Oh, all of
Yeah.
us listening.
It's a sort of signature in, your birth chart
Okay.
for what was happening on the level of um the collective.
They're that slow, years long, but we're not talking a decade long. It's a 2 or 3 year transit.
Yes, but it happens, right? There.
Right. So I want to offer it's the constant Jupiter in me that always wants to be optimistic about this. There's this, we do have this like peaceful opportunity for change going on, or a compassionate level of change that can be happening. What you were talking about, UBI and some of the other stuff that's going on, and you're like, all these ideas are coming in and nobody can agree. But I went right into BRICS. Is everybody aware about the BRICS economic forum, and how like over 200 countries have joined BRICS because they can see the value in it. It's like we have these outliers who don't want to join, but we have the majority of the world now agreeing that we need a gold-backed currency. So I'm like, the news is central bank digital currency, but there's this quiet thing happening underneath that's going to create a change for us. That's exciting. And I was like, I think we could feel hopeful that there are a lot of people coming together. I just have to throw that out there. And maybe you're not even sure what I'm talking about, but BRICS nations are really coming together to create a change. And BRICS is forming not a central bank, but a digitized currency. They are.
Yeah. And this is what is spelling the death of cash. But then you have governments then, because these are centralized digital currencies, they are centralized to a country or centralized to the government or a governing body. And that means they have control then of our finances.
Not really. Not
Yeah.
not in their system, because if it's blockchain, it's not, they don't have access to it.
If we go the way of a central bank digital currency, they absolutely do, right? They are the ones that are controlling the blockchain. They are the ones that would have access to what it is that we are all spending money on. On the surface, they're telling you, oh yeah, blockchain, it's secure, it's all of this. But underneath it is something that is
I'm
a
going to
little
vote
scarier.
for Uranus to bring us a great big surprise on that one. What I love about
A positive surprise would be awesome, but I have a feeling that this is going to be one of those struggle points that comes up.
I think it will be a struggle point. I think you're right about that. But
Yeah.
think about
Especially when we get to the opposition of Jupiter and Saturn, right?
Uranus and Taurus at the 29 degrees, and Uranus new, Taurus old, right? Interesting that the BRICS current digital currency is a gold backed. So Taurus digital currency, Uranus. I think it's an interesting combination that Uranus and Taurus helped to bring about. I can't wait to see how it plays out. I actually think it could be okay.
Even more interesting in that is that gold is ruled by Leo.
Yes. Yeah.
The sun.
Right.
And
Interesting.
a lot of this energy right now is happening in Leo. So Leo things coming up to the surface. It's a conversation I think that will be continuous. I'm not sure it's good or bad. Gold backed is good, but is that really how that turns out? Remains to be seen.
Right.
Now we have to enter into the full moon on August 19th. If it's not enough just to have this T square, we also now have a full moon occurring in the across the um, axis. It's so on August 19th across the Leo and Aquarius axis. In fact, the full moon itself is at 27.15 degrees of Aquarius, and it happens to be squaring Uranus, which will be at 27.11 of the sign of Taurus. So here we have disruption and change, another surprise. Who knows? Maybe something more around what we've been talking about, all the different themes. Aquarius is the degree of the full moon. It sits at the same degree as the moon of the USA. In the Sibley chart of the USA, the moon sits at 27.10 Aquarius.
Get your
And
everybody get your notebooks ready. She's talking about some really fascinating stuff in the next 5 minutes.
yeah, right. This is where it all starts to come together and blows your mind.
Blows your mind.
So the moon in a chart of a country or a nation represents the people, right? The power to the people is what I get in my mind from our USA moon being in the sign of Aquarius. And that same degree is being triggered by the full moon on August 19th at the same time as the T square that is, jetting energy all around. And that is I want to say that the original purpose of the United States in this case was about democracy, right? It was an experiment basically in democracy, a republic of, states that came together with a federal government, but that were joined together, not one over the other, right? There was this identification of freedom. And Aquarius, in no small way, also represents freedom,
Totally.
right? It represents freedom of the people, power of the people.
A sort of rebellious nature, I think.
Yes, because in modern times, Uranus is the ruling planet of the sign of Aquarius. But in the more traditional rulership, it was Saturn. So we have two rulers, Saturn and Uranus, who are in totally divergent directions. So we have this two-faced sort of energy where there is this looking backwards and trying to reconstruct what was, and where we are looking forward as well at what would it look like in the future. And this takes me back to our conversation that we had sort of at the beginning today, where we talked about Aquarius and the Pluto in Aquarius in particular, where there is this coming undone of everything in the middle, the center falling out, and the margins being pulled inward. So in a sign of human concerns, Aquarius margins might be women. We have a woman running for president, and this energy seems to really favor that. We have other margins, right? We have the margins where we have different races on the margins. We have different economic levels on the margins, and these concerns are all moving center, while the center is moving to the margins. So it's a big shift in the way this energy works out in our lives, right? It's a big change all the way around in the USA, where something like a UBI, universal basic income, starts to move those people from the margins into more of the center economically, right? Where even an idea of a central bank or digital currencies, are leveling the playing field in some way, right? I can't even enumerate all the ways that could possibly look like. And the idea of control or central control, which also spells authoritarianism, falling apart because it can't hold. The center can't hold during this period of time. So it moves the power to the people. Now, you're still going to see backlash of authoritarian countries. You're still going to see those themes coming up until Pluto's finished with his transit through Aquarius 20 years from now. Hand raised. What up?
My hand raise was just only to warn you we're at the noon o'clock.
We're going on.
Okay. All right. I
Is
just want
is
to
that
let
okay? We're going on. If that's okay with you, I'm going on.
I'm perfectly fine.
Because what I want to talk about now is how, we have all these players on the screen in our country, right? We have Joe Biden, we have Kamala Harris, we have Trump, we have Obama, and all of these people have connections in their own natal charts to this same energy. So I want to talk about that. Now remember, this is not my opinion. This is fact, right? That these things are happening.
Yep.
So the first one we're going to talk about is Joe Biden, who has his natal sun at 27 degrees of Scorpio, which means that Uranus at 27 degrees of Taurus is in opposition to his sun, and that happens at the full moon. I want to say that this is the fall of a leader. So I just wonder, does he back out of the presidency? Does he die? Does he But this is, the passing away, the leaving of this person, right? Kamala Harris, her natal Saturn is at 28 degrees of Aquarius, so that's within orb of the 27-degree full moon, and she's a Libra, by the way. She was born with a full moon also at 27 degrees but Aries and Libra in her case. Exact at the full moon, 27 degrees Aries, 27 degrees Libra, which makes a harmonious sextile in her chart to the August full moon. The
Tell me
August 19th full moon.
Harris's Saturn at 27,
At 28 Aquarius.
28 Aquarius.
Yeah,
Okay.
28 Aquarius. So 1 degree,
Yep.
is well within orbs. So this shines a very positive, hopeful, harmonious light on her energy, as opposed to Joe Biden's in this case, which was the sun setting, and we have the moon rising here with her. And then if we look at Trump's chart, this full moon is opposing his Mars at 26 degrees of Leo, still within orbs, right? 26 Leo Mars is a very in your face, I want to be seen, heard kind of placement. And Mars is aggression, is conflict. And what I see with this full moon for him is like not knowing like more of that sort of bombastic sort of way that he has, because he doesn't have any clear path with this particular aspect to reasserting himself. And so more frustration, more impatience, more volatility perhaps on his part. But Leo is always, the sun, right? The sun rules that.
I have to capture, I'm trying to capture all of the political players. You said Trump is at his Mars is at
The full moon is in opposition to his Mars at 26 Leo.
26 Leo.
26 Leo.
I'll try to pay better attention. Got it.
Nope, you got it. And then I have to bring back Obama, because his nodes, his north node and south node, are at 27 degrees Leo and 27 degrees Aquarius. So because the full moon is in Aquarius, we have his past, his wisdom, his past performance, his participation, moving back now into the current day. So we already noted at the new moon that it was his birthday, and that his new moon was conjunct the sun, or the new moon was conjunct his sun, a new beginning, a new visibility for him. And now we see his nodes are directly on this full moon, and it's a possibility of a resurgence of him more. We've always thought that he was participating behind the scenes in the presidency, and even with Kamala and her ascendancy to run for president. But it's also maybe the emergence where we see more of what that impact has been and what his leadership or guidance, 27 Leo is. Again, love him or hate him, that I'm not speaking to whether we like him or not. It's just what the energy of these transits say. So look to hear more from Mr. Obama in the future. Plus that day of that full moon, we have Mercury conjunct the sun, cazimi, a very powerful coming together at 27 degrees of Leo that is squaring Uranus. So shock, announcements maybe, surprises. I wrote down Biden steps down, question mark. I
Mm,
don't know, but expect the unexpected would be the way that I um, would put this out to people
yep.
because we just don't know. I wish we just don't know. Is it the world gets in, do we crash into uh, or get drawn into a world war with the whole Israel Iran thing that happens earlier in the month? I certainly hope not. Um, but we don't know. All we know is that everything that we've known is falling away in order for the new, the fringe, the untried, the untested to move more toward the center.
Mm,
It could be a surprise VP announcement, Christine. It could be a whole lot of stuff. And again, I'm not going to conspiracy theories. I hate them. This whole idea of, just this underbelly thing going on. It may be very true, but I think this also is an energy that brings a lot of revelation to the surface.
mhm.
Revelation, another aspect of Uranian energy that we can expect to see during the next month. It is a crazy month.
It is a crazy.
So, self care, self nurture, try to stay above the fray, be aware, but not involved if you can, right? Do your due diligence, participate at the level that, in any of these events that you're comfortable with. But just remember, your job is to go with the punches and find your path forward, live your life, your destiny, while the rest of this stuff is all happening in the bigger, wider world. Boom. What do you got to say? What do you say?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm reading in here. Christine is Buckingham is talking about the VP announcement, and Debbie's talking about the DNC. It's just, I always like to say, hold on to your panties. It's that kind of month. It truly is the epitome of that kind of month. And mind your manners. Like, if everything else fails you, mind your manners. Be kinder than necessary this month, because things could be very revelatory, and I think the best we can do is to be our best selves, right? It could be very shocking.
Right? As if the other things that have happened haven't been shocking.
Right.
Right? So it's kind of, we're almost getting
Used
used
to it?
to
We're getting
this.
used to it. Exactly.
Yeah. But I want to say that, it is the time period that we are in right now um, that catalyzes the future when Neptune and Saturn move into Aries in 2025,
Mhm.
and when Uranus moves out of Taurus and into Gemini in 2025.
Mhm.
So pay attention. Watch closely what is happening now
I
because it's
wanted,
going to have impulses later.
I wanted everybody to think about the nodes, the lunar nodes,
Mm.
currently in Aries, right?
Aries and Libra, right?
Aries,
South Node in Libra.
and I started thinking during the show today. I was going back to when they were in Scorpio Taurus, and I remember having this feeling about the manipulation and the secrets, the very Scorpio, the darker part of Scorpio that I felt in my heart was playing out in front of us at a world level. I'm not talking about personal relationships here. And how we maybe, as these nodes are really, we're in them now, these leadership nodes. And Chiron too was the other one. Like, I feel like we're really going to be leaning into this new leadership and this more benevolent way of leading. And I feel like the fullness of the manipulation and the secret stuff is winding down and coming to an end. This is just Tam's thoughts on it, but it
But
was
it's definitely possible.
well, and we're moving into, and you and I have had the conversation about next year, Neptune in Aries, and how that's going to bring up, in my opinion, a more compassionate leadership style to the world. That's one of the things I think is going to play out. I don't know,
Absolutely.
just food for thought that, are we at the end of the secrets? Is there a time period coming up, Janet? And I haven't looked at this yet. Another moment of exposure, I guess, is what I'm looking for.
Well, exposure as in secrets revealed? Is
Yes.
that
Thank you.
oh,
Yes.
I think these next 9 months, as we move into, the spring even of 2025, are very much about the underbellies being exposed, right?
Which transits in particular are doing that in your mind?
I'm pretty sure that Saturn and Neptune both moving into Aries.
Okay.
I mean, literally, these 2 are dancing for, 25 to 26, right, in some very powerful ways. And, that brings together authority, um, with the idea of spirit, right? It's joining 2 very different parts of us, or 2 very different archetypes in a sign that's bold, that's new, that's fresh, that's the representation of a new beginning.
Mm.
So it should be very interesting, those how that impacts us. But as typical, we usually resist, people generally resist the change. So it is often a time of conflict, right? When
Sure.
big things change like
That's
that.
some shakeout for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, in the next year, all of those outer planets change signs.
Yes.
Uranus and
Big
Neptune
year.
and, Pluto change, well, changed already, but they're all kind of making their moves into new signs, which offers us up new opportunities. And, I just wanted to say that, Debbie, in one of your comments, you said something about Brexit. We weren't talking about Brexit, we were talking about BRICS,
Yes.
which is the association of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. That was the original, um, group that came together to form a new economic Brexit-ish, or, European Union-ish, um, uh, combination.
Right.
So
And it's not just the 5 leaders that make decisions in that. There's an entire committee, and there's
yeah,
more than 200 countries involved, and it's
yeah.
not just them. So
No, but it's not Brexit either.
no,
So
it is
I just
also not. I wanted to
yeah,
say the same thing. It is
yeah,
not Brexit
yeah,
at all.
yeah.
I know we really run long, but I want to ask you, Janet, is there anything in human design that we need to pay attention to in August that's like worth noting?
I did not even look
Okay.
at human design. Certainly we could do a quick rundown, but I intended on doing that actually on Friday when we looked at
There you
this.
go. That's fine. We'll do it Friday.
Yeah, but if we just had to take a quick look at where that full moon is on the 19th, we're looking at the gate of 29 and 30, and those are very impactful gates.
Oh,
One that tells us about commitment and saying yes to the right things, and the 30 about following our passions. Should be an interesting moon.
interesting.
But guess what? It's also followed by, after that full moon, which is just kind of big, it's followed by a move of the moon into the gate 55, which really then becomes more soothing, right? This is about abundance, and this is about having faith in the benevolent nature of the universe, that even though it's chaotic, and that there are all of these crazy things happening, that we're moving in the right direction. We're moving in the direction of evolution, and that evolution is pushing us, as it is in human design, toward becoming more emotionally responsive and responsible, more democratic as a people. And I don't mean that as a political statement, but as a way that we govern together,
Right.
instead of there may be a leader there, there's a leader, but that leader taking direction from people. And all of that is very positive as we move forward. But,
You got You got to go through the fire.
You
I
got to
will.
go
I
through.
forgot to mention. We talked about it before the show. August 27th is a grand trine with
Mhm.
Venus, Pluto, and Uranus. And trines by nature are healing. So they are in. They are. Yep. Hold on, I got so many thoughts going on. Talk about the Mercury in Virgo. My head, well, is going to explode. Let's just say that there's some respite there, that the grand trine can bring an opportunity for healing 10 days after this T square. That's good news. The
Yeah,
other,
mostly because Venus moves into Libra,
yes,
sign she rules,
bring some balance, right?
diplomacy, tact,
Diplomacy.
balance, niceness,
The
right?
other thing that I wanted to mention around the T square is that when there is a T square, am I correct in saying there's an answer? So to me, there's always an answer baked into the astrological cake. This one is the missing part of the square. This, if you notice the half a box that Janet made, the opposite end of the T lies the answer. It's in the area of Sagittarius. If we can look at and address and be aware of our philosophies and belief systems, we can lean into some kind of, maybe at least personal relief, right? Looking at your own beliefs around all of this is sort of your crutch as you're
Yeah.
working through that T square.
Yeah,
Did I get that semi-correct?
you did that quite well. That the opposing sign of Sagittarius, specifically 27 degrees or 17 degrees, excuse me, of Sagittarius is where we get a bit of a balance point.
Right.
Remember what you're fighting for, right? Remember freedom, remember truth, remember we're getting to the heart of something. And I want to say that that particular degree is pretty close to the galactic center,
Oh,
maybe 8 or 9 degrees, but enough that that galactic center is huge, right? So like Pluto, it can, run up to 15-degree orbs. And I wonder if that starts to change our framework from being just Earth centric to more galactic oriented.
well, think about that. Sagittarians ruling your personal philosophy, right? Ruling
Mhm.
what you think and believe. I think that's a beautiful thing to consider, that maybe we are moving. Yes. Oh, very good. Very good. Yay.
Woohoo!
And
Uh,
will you read Pam Zaruba's comment? She says, oh my God, 29/30.
is her unconscious cross.
Oh,
Um, so, uh, so people who have the 20 gate 29 or the gate 30 or both defined in their human design, this adds some power, adds some influence to their charts. Like it's going to happen for me too. I have both gate 29 and 30 defined. So it really puts a focus on what is it you're saying yes to in your life, Pam, and as well, when you're saying yes and committing your energy, is it something that you truly have a passion for? Because if it's not, then it's going to be very disheartening over the course of time. So watch what you say yes to. That would be my advice there, and what you commit yourself to.
wow. What a show
29.
we just did. This is our biggest ever.
There was so much. I mean, really, we could have done a webinar kind of thing. I'm not even sure I went into all of the detail that I could have gone into, but that's okay. We did it as much as we could. And I know some of you out there are probably confused,
Yep.
and that's okay. But
Yep.
if you're confused, ask questions.
Yep.
Come to the shows on the end of the month or every Monday or Friday. Ask your questions. Send them to us, either Tam at choosebigchange.com or Janet at living-astrology.com. Ask us questions. I love answering questions.
I would, before we head off and sign off on this one, I would like to let everybody know that the cover reveal of the 2025 Energy Almanac is coming up. If you're not following me on Facebook, please do. I have a Facebook business page, choosebigchange.com. or just friend me. I love adding friends to my Facebook. That's perfectly fine. But I am going to do a Facebook Live and reveal the cover. And I have a little webinar coming up in August that I'll be doing. So you can also get on my email list if you feel like it. And you can just email me.
ChooseBigChange.com. Is your Facebook page also called Choose Big Change?
It is.
And your Instagram is?
The Energy Almanac.
The Energy Almanac. Also a good place to go.
Yeah.
All right.
So all kinds of stuff coming up for fall. We're getting ready to launch 2025 pre-sales, or early bird, I'm calling it this year, September 1 through September 10. So we'll have.
Oh my God, that's only a month away.
A month away. So we have some nice bundles to share. And Janet, our next date together is looking like
August 28th.
Ah, perfect. I'm adding it.
Ooh, right just now. Post all of the chaos. Be able to review August and all of its glory and talk about September in all of its glory.
Woohoo!
Nice. Very nice. All right. Thank you, Tam, so much for joining me this morning. And again, I know this has been kind of a lot of information. Let us know if you have questions. Watch it again.
Replay. Share this with your friends. Share this one. I will be putting a link everywhere.
Awesome. I love it. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Take care. See ya. I'll see you on Friday. All right. Bye for now.
Bye.